Fuck's sake. It's been a ride, mate.
Yeah. Well, I guess we should at least. Well, the first thing I wanted to do is this is the that's the Chicago Manual of Styles, the 16th edition, and that's the one where we found the glosser.
Yeah, that's
And
the one I bought.
That was the milestone in cracking the code of the all uppercase or the symbolic text. I spent 7 odd years trying to work out what the name of that text was, and every time I asked a magistrate in a court, that was where the trouble was. They would not answer the question, what is the all uppercase text?
But you couldn't find it, could you?
And I could not find it, and this is the book that I narrowed it down to. And on the day Rowan came up and he went and bought this book, this is the actual one he bought, and when I saw the thickness of it, I was disappointed, because I thought, well, how am I going to find something in that many pages that I'm not looking for? And that was the day I actually gave up looking for what we now know as the glosser. And I went into my my friend in town and I said, I'm done. I can't find it. I don't have the ability to crack this code. And when I came back, Rowan had this book for about an hour, and he just said, oh, I found something.
That's not English.
And out of all that time, I was looking for something in the English language, and Rowan just came up and said, well, have you looked in foreign languages? And there it is, in foreign languages.
Yep.
Now what I've done here is another researcher, a great friend. He just got hold of the latest, the 17th edition, I would say it is. It's even glossed. 17th edition, so this is the latest edition, and nothing has changed from the 16th edition to the 17th edition. But there is something strange, or quite, and again, Rowan pointed this out. I didn't even look at the page number. But on page 6, oh, hang on, what are we? Oh, way off, hang on a minute. On page 666.
Why do I know that number wrong?
Yeah, I don't know. I might have to edit some of this out because it's taking me so long to find it. Here it is. It's on page 665 of the 17th edition. The American Sign Language, still in foreign languages, and I can I'll point you to that. I'll take some pictures of this and show you.
So it's worth probably pointing out, Rom, that in here it was chapter 11.144. In this one it's 11.128.
Yes, 11.125 for
11.125
for the sign language. But the crucial part is yes, 11.128. So it's it doesn't look like anything's been added into this actual section. Mm-hmm. Everything is exactly the same, and it also gives a sample of. It's got here, the sign for a car drove by is written as vehicle drive by, and it's hyphenated. The same thing happened in this. I was wondering if they would change that, but it's obviously it's not going to change.
You can't. They can't.
Yeah,
they'll be committing treason the other way if they did. They changed it. The system works currently because everyone has been fooled by this and have accepted under tacit consent or acquiescence under the merchant confirmation rule these documents that are false. So the system works. If they were to change it back to a name, they would immediately be committing treason because they have no jurisdiction with the maxim of similar with similar and dissimilar things ought not to be united. That would immediately engage them as a corporation trying to engage with a real man or a real woman, and that's illegal. That cannot exist in law.
And that's the whole bottom line of this whole fraud. It all boils down to the fact that the document has used a marginal text or a non-English part of the document and insert that into the actual context of the book. When you look at any book, this is the context of it, that's the descriptive part of the book, and in the borders here, which is called the margin, it's also referred to as the gutter. And the gutter text is also known as the sewer. And in the Masonic symbolism, you'll probably notice that they call it the goat. And I think it's in Black's Law Dictionary that the word goat is the man-made channels that channels the water from land into the sea. It channels the profits of land into offshore accounts.
Yeah, it certainly does.
And what happens is the marginal text has a different language going on in the marginal text, so that the trained eye can tell that text written in the margins is always a separate form of text that's written in the context. And even in this case, where there's something in the margin, they've even italiced it. So italic means removed from the page, and in this case I think it's italic, and even some hyphen R.
Something interesting I was reading on was Ronald Reagan's oath of office.
Yeah.
The oath of office heading at the top is underlined.
Yes.
And underline means italic, and italic means removed from the page. So what his sign, Ronald Reagan's sign, was not an oath of office because that part was removed under the typesetting conventions.
They're actually telling you the truth through a symbolized,
absolutely, yeah.
Symbolized version. They're actually telling you the truth. When you see the courthouse, it'll say in Cairns, it says Cairns Courthouse. That's what the presumption is. But if it's written in the marginal text, which is the text that is from the gutter, the text that is from the sewer, the text that is from the underworld, that text cannot be put or usurped into the context of the book. But when it is usurped, or if you don't know about that text, that it's a different language or a different version, it has no jurisdiction with the English language. If you're not aware of that, then that's where your consent is. It's actually consent of ignorance, isn't it?
It is. It's the test in Black's Law for an idiot is someone who doesn't know their own name, and they have a duty then to take your power of attorney and administer your affairs for you. And if you walk in and agree that you're a Mr. Hilda when there's no evidence that this ever existed apart from the fact that the police run around and make these things up. Something interesting I saw, Ron, was a cheque that had been returned to one of the researchers from the New South Wales Police, and he'd overpaid a fine, and they gave him a refund. And it said from the police are the Crown Trust. So they are the trustee, so they've got to find some other fool to turn into the trustee for them, so they then become the beneficiary. They create the debt because they're the trustee.
They own it.
They own it, and they try and give it to you on the side of the road, and now they've resorted to posting them because they've got to post them too with the window in them, don't they? Because the window puts it inside, so you can have a little peek inside the letter and see if you want it or not, and then it's up to you whether you want to give it royal assent by opening it. I mean, it's really that simple, isn't it? There's your contract, there's your agreement.
Well, that's the proclamation.
It's the proclamation.
Yeah.
Because the proclamation dates the day you got your letter.
Yeah,
Opened it.
Signed with the sign language.
Yep.
Sealed in an envelope that is strangely a 2-to-1 ratio, which is the same size as a ledger that's on a tombstone, which is...
Well, you pointed that out very interesting, that the registered posts are all different sizes to the A4, aren't they? So they actually may have a different meaning when you post them.
Yeah. And then signed, sealed, and then delivery. Delivered is the delivery through the mail.
Yep.
And I think what's starting to happen with these government bodies is that they're starting to realise that that we are waking up to it, the people. Mm-hmm. So before, the police on the side of the road, they could be abusive, and they would abuse their trust because they knew that we didn't have the ability to understand what was going on. Yeah. But I think now that we've discovered that it's a foreign trust, and it can only be it's offer and acceptance. It's the only thing it can be. And I think the Unidroit Treaty of Rome also makes that clear, that that these contracts.
They use pacta sunt servanda as I think about the third
Yes.
article, which simply means contracts must be kept. Now this is where they're falling over with us because we've agreed to keep the contract. We've just under something called the mirror image doctrine. If you look that up, it's if you have a contract and you change anything of it. This one is particularly in New South Wales. You change any part of it and you send it back, you end up with a new contract.
Yeah.
And that's what we've done every time is, okay, well, we'll accept it, here's the fee to accept it. And under the merchant confirmation rule, we then send it back. If they don't reply within the 14 days, we've got a contract and they are refusing to pay their side.
Yeah, they're refusing to settle the contract.
They settle the debt. So Unidroid, I've tried to contact Unidroid actually, they've been very quiet in the office, but the International Criminal Court, I don't know, they seem to be, things seem to be happening in the background. My birth certificate was updated without me actually asking for it the other day. I went in to ask about, I had a photocopy of the old one that was sent to the Federal Police, which they've conveniently lost, or said that I never sent it to them, even though they sent me a scanned copy back. And then they told me that I only sent them a scanned copy. It's like, I don't know how I sent an email of a scanned copy of a birth certificate and got a postal receipt, but you know, they're obviously lying and bearing evidence. But yeah, so my birth certificate, the Hilda was changed, well, if it even is mine, was changed from all uppercase to title case. So now all the court cases that exist are in, there's no birth certificate attached to any of it. So I'm not quite sure what they're doing, but things are happening.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Well, look, I think we've even just, I think that my last talk, there's a little bit on the birthing certificates here.
They're refusing to give me the real one. They said they don't issue it anymore and that my surname is assumed to be my father's name. And if you have a look up what an assumption is, that's something false held to be true. So we are working under assumed names, and they've told me that the Registrar General will not issue the original certificate or a copy of it, but they'll issue a new one. So they're telling me that they've made new birth certificates at some point without any permission or any legislative requirements in New South Wales. So just basically went, okay, well, we're going to assume you're a surname and we'll put it on there, which was actually a word mark and not even a surname. And then they assumed that they could change the form of the birth certificate, but they should change the content.
Just going back to the word mark that Rowan said, the word mark is the all uppercase text.
Yep.
And I think you just mentioned before that this styles manual, where's the section you found that constitutes a name?
So this I've brought this one up before, Ron, but we can do it again. It's a great little section because it's only 2 lines. If you'd like to, personal names. So you can read that.
Yeah, you read it out.
The names of all individuals, real or fictitious, should always be given initial capitals in publications and correspondence. For example, and they've got some Michael Lunig, Mr. Curley, and Ugeru.
So a name would be like this.
Yep.
And this is a very interesting character too. This is Edward.
One thing about this, Ron, there's a 1966 version.
Yeah.
And it says the same thing, except should has the word must.
Okay.
So
is that the 1966? Because that's when the change of...
So the 66 version that our birth certificates would have been under, the federal government style said you must use initial capitals.
Okay.
I've seen that in the state library. I can get a copy of that.
This is prior to that.
So one thing I want to point out, Ron, that I've only just sort of worked out too, is that both birth certificates are both legal fictions, and none of it's real. Even Rom-And-Rohan is another legal fiction.
Well, the whole concept of a trust
is a legal fiction.
Is a legal fiction.
And
it's
if they haven't told you, it's a fraud. Yeah.
But we can enter into this trust because sometimes these trusts are good for governance.
Yep.
But on the condition that the trust has been operated within the terms of the trust.
So with our language, grammatical stuff that we found, all these academic references, we've got now the ability to destroy every trust on the planet because they're basically not ever written properly with fraud. But what we're also saying too is that we could enter into the trust if we agree to whichever party we wanted to. One was the creditor, the other one
I think what's happened is that when this foreign trust system came in, they had to sort of destroy the original governments of Australia. So what they do is they separate all the people from one united government, into they call it a land of independent sovereign nation states.
Yep.
And then what they do is individually.
So we're not sovereign citizens, we're independent sovereign nation states.
Yeah. And then
that was reiterated by the brothers in the High Court, wasn't it?
Yes,
in the 70s.
That's right, in the 70s. It's also in a document called the Constitution Con, and it's I think it was from the Murphys. They were the High Court judges in the 70s, and they wrote this article. And what happens is they separated all the people of Australia back into a land of independent sovereign nation states. And then the foreign registrar generals of the foreign corporations, they then individually to each person gets the proclamation out. So rather than going through a government, they actually do it individually. So it's up to each and every one of us to accept the mail or the proclamation articles.
And would that be right to say that that's along the lines of in the Bible, the apostles? And the apostolos?
Yes, you did some research on that.
So an apostolos is a letter to a higher authority, and basically it's asking, do you want to be my slave?
Yes.
And that's what they're doing with all the documents that you receive if you open them. So here's a contract. Would you like to work for us for pretty much no pay? And I think the compensation we get, or the consideration, is Medicare and the dole, isn't it? That they're the two.
Well, I think the compensation's so little is because we've assumed that the Foreign Administration Corporation that derives from the District of Columbia, or wherever it may come from, we've assumed that that's our de jure real government.
Yeah.
Because they've called it Commonwealth of Australia using the word mark that belongs to a foreign entity. It's not written in English.
Yeah, Anna von Ritz had an excellent analogy, which was the guy that we hired to mow the grass has offered to be the police and the judge and every politician. So his little company he's put someone in doing all those jobs for us.
That's right.
And he's taken over, and we haven't realised that Gary's mowing is now running the country, and we only hired him to
mow the yard.
To mow the yard. And this is what the administration is about. That they've taken over the government, they're running everything for us, but they have no legal right to do it. And if we want to fire Gary, we can. And I guess that's what it comes down to, is that this is. And Gary might be an American or something. Right. And so he's come here, we've hired his company, he's sent over some people, but he's hired Australians to do it. So they've actually become traitors to us by doing that, because when they act against us who want to stay in the Commonwealth of Australia,
that's what's happening.
And with you and I and a few other people who've actually stepped out of the system or back into the...
Well, not out of the system.
Not out of the system, but back into the creditor.
The creditor side.
Creditor side, and they won't let us do it. And that's where there's sort of treason and slavery, which is what I put into the ICC, comes in, because Gary doesn't have any constitutional right. Now, Gary came in, and he knew he didn't have any constitutional right, so he went, geez, we better have another Queen. Let's get the Queen of Australia. And in 1999, the High Court of Australia confirmed that in Sue v. Hill, that if you want to be an Australian citizen, you have to have the Queen of Australia. So an Australian national would be the Queen of the United Kingdom and Ireland, which is what the Constitution says. And the High Court of Australia, under Section 71, would not be the word mark or capitals one, it would be the one with the initial capital letters. No wonder they didn't want my application there, because I put it in to the 71 section High Court. No wonder they couldn't hear it. No. Like, that's not us. So I hope you guys are starting to see the two entities, the two worlds,
Look, I think the British world, but before the United States corporations took over, I think it ran the same type of system as well. It was just a trust, but it was controlled by more probably...
Well, obviously it was, and that was confirmed in Mabo in 1992, wasn't it? That native title does exist, and this is why they want to keep all the original inhabitants of this country incorporated. And I see a lot of those, I walk around and see those land councils incorporated. Land corporations, and I'm like, well, that's how they're keeping them incorporated, and they can contract with them. Never let them come back as who they really are, do they?
No, they don't want anyone to come back and work out. What they want is absolute directive power over the people.
And they've had that for a long time.
They've had it for a long time, but the directive power belongs to we the people.
Yep.
But if you are them, the citizen, you are no longer we the people.
Working for Gary's mowing.
You're working for Gary's mowing. And this is what what people are starting, they think that we are the people. And this also happens in the United States too.
Yep.
The first thing a United States police officer asks, are you a United States citizen? And when they say yes, they know that they're no longer a national of the United States of America.
It would be good to clarify too for people what a citizen is. In Black's Law, the dictionary that I found it in anyway, a citizen is a member of a city-state with the liabilities and the privileges. So privileges aren't rights.
They're not rights.
They're granted. And liability, you've got a liability to defend the city. So there's Australia, the city, which is the word mark in all capitals. And then there's the Commonwealth of Australia, which is the one written in the Constitution with the initial capitals. So that one has nationals. But it's very interesting if you read the, I can't think of the act, but it's the one that creates Australian, it's our Citizenship Act or something like that. It talks about a national having citizenship. So it's like, well, why would a national have a citizenship? Wouldn't a national have nationality?
Well, it's a change.
Yeah, so you can see where they've done it.
You can't be a national if you become a citizen. And because of the corporation, the Commonwealth of Australia Corporation or company, whatever it is, and because it's registered to the District of Columbia, it's certainly not registered to anything.
Well, that's another thing interesting, Rom, is that logo there is intellectual property registered in America as well.
Yeah.
And it's registered to the Commonwealth of Australia in all capitals.
I wouldn't say America. I'd say
US Federal Reserve.
Yeah, but United States, because the American people have been subject to the same.
Well, they're under the same. Well, that's why they're building a wall to keep them in, isn't it?
There's a lot of good things that I like about Trump.
Yeah.
But there's I've always wondered about the wall. Is it to stop the Mexicans from coming in, or is it to stop the?
I think if they let him do it in the first place, he wouldn't have been bothered with it. I think it's just now and who's going to win.
Well, sometimes when they create a big commotion here, you know that there's something happening
else going on
over there.
What's happening on the Canadian border?
But I think the American people, and they know it too. They've been subject to this. This
Canada, America, anywhere in the Commonwealth.
And I think it's just the European private banking system, and it's a very clever system. I've got to give them that. Hats off to them for the trickery and the deceit. But really, if you can work these things out.
I mean, if we hold up all this, these are all the. This is some of the. If you want to hold those two up front, this is the. There's no counterfactual evidence to this anywhere. There's nowhere that says all capitals is the name, is there? What we can find is all capitals is dog Latin, or all capitals is a word mark. And a mark, another name, is a trademark. And another name for a trademark is a brand. Now, if you're branding people, that's slavery. You can't do that.
Well, that's why they call it voluntary servitude.
Yep.
And but the servitude has come through our ignorance of the
how to read.
Of how to read. It really boils down to that one simple fact. And what blows me out is that the whole system is sitting on the very fact that the all uppercase text says nothing. It reads nothing. And if it was to read anything, it would have to be hyphenated.
It's interesting if you ever look at the intellectual property laws, IP Australia and all that, where you register trademarks. When you own an artwork, and you're an artist, Rom, you'll be able to attribute to this, you own copyright, and you also own the ability to assign meaning to your art. So when they're actually writing in all capitals, they're not authors, because an author you can read. Yeah. They're artists.
That's right. Creating a logo, a symbol.
And fraud,
a picture.
If we want to look at and find out what fraud actually is, if we look in the maxims, fraud is an artifice. It pretends one thing whilst being another.
Yeah,
so there's your art. It's artwork.
Well, the fraud is actually passing something off.
Passing it off, yeah. The documents say nothing, and they're inert. Basically, they're inert. If you try to use them and say that they are something, and that a word mark is a name, that's, I guess, where the fraud happens.
Yeah, that was my last warning to the Registrar General of Queensland, was to be very careful allowing police officers now to write out tickets on the side of the road.
It is a crime in Australia,
uttering a counterfeit. So therefore, just the very fact that a police officer stands on the side of the road and issues out a ticket, his crime is a life imprisonment crime for uttering a counterfeit, because he's serving a foreign deity or a foreign company against Well, it's not against the will of Australia. It's just that the Australian people haven't cottoned on to what's happening. But now that we're starting to cotton onto it, if they want to operate the system still in Australia and have the benefits of this this weighted system, because it's weighted. If you're on their side, you can't lose, and if you're on the other side, you can't win. So it's
But you can change sides in the system.
You have to change sides. Look, we've got a couple of really good people that have worked hard. 2 ex-police officers that have looked in it. They've worked out something's not right, but they've looked at the system itself. And what these officers have to do is look at themselves with their own standing. There's one in Western Australia that's putting up
It's not so much who you are, but it's who you're being.
Well, it's that's right. A name is actually the identification of an office of the creditor, the name of the office of the creditor, the name of the office of the debtor. So we don't, I guess in a way, we don't really have a name. But when you know what your name is...
At birth, they gave us the option of a couple of officers, did they?
Yes, and that's what the word birth is. A birth is really a place where you park your ship.
Your citizenship.
Your citizenship. But the BERTH is where you park the actual boat, the boat, which is the equity. But the BIRTH, which is really interesting, is the birth of a person. And a person is an incorporation, a corporation. Yeah. So a person is something that is joined to something else.
I've noticed that the courts in Sydney beat up a friend of mine when he asked for the definition that the court will be using for the word person. They threw him out of the court, beat him up, and broke his ribs on the way out. Simply for asking what definition of person we'll be using today.
Yes, it's very...
Because it was a corporation, they didn't want to say that. Get him out.
It's unhealthy in some ways to question their foreign military brutal regime. It's unhealthy, but when you get to a certain point where you do know a lot more about it, because a little bit of knowledge is dangerous. But the more you know, the more you can protect yourself against this this regime, and the more they actually back down. Because when they do that without consent, or the debtor cannot attack the creditor.
Ever. The debtor is there to protect the creditor. That's the military side of this trust. I was having trouble understanding how it worked, but basically it's like a tiny little military, and two officers, a grantor, a debtor, a creditor. So, and the trustee is the military to look up, or the military type to look after the creditor. Yeah, and that's how it works.
That's it.
So, and that's why that's your mixed war, which is an army against one individual.
Whenever you go into a court, it's really hard. But look, the only real way out is you've got to let them know that you are not the person who they assume you to be. But if you're going to be forced to act inside the court and become the debtor, because this is how I've always done it. I said, well, I'm the creditor. Would you like me to be the debtor? And
offer the contract for the
offer
debtor.
the contract of the compensation it's going to cost them for you to commit the crime of being a debtor in a company. I mean, just joining or getting on the roll of the Commonwealth of Australia Corporation is an act of treason, because you're leaving your national country and you're joining a foreign private.
And you're now fighting against your own country.
Fighting against your own, even though you don't see it, even though
you don't know you're doing it, guys. But ignorance juris excuse that in the mind. Ignorance of the law excuses no one. So thank you for watching these videos too. Obviously you're not ignorant and you want to know, but this is why we say you've got to give everything back. You can't hold those documents.
Yes, that's right. And sometimes holding the legal title to anything, cars, your home, the whole lot.
I mean, this is hard, guys. This isn't easy. We joke about it when we're on our own, but we've been through hell. We've really been put through the ringer. They will not let us step into that office of creditor, even though we're quite. But there it is. There's the two officers. Rom's Pure. The birth certificate in New South Wales that's just been corrected has the reference number to my proper certificate on it. Now, in 72, the births were registered at the local courthouse. Mine was 2190. So now what they're saying is they will not give me that certificate, but they can't refuse that. That's mine.
No, they can't.
And that's where this treason, and they're not saying they won't give it to me, and they will not admit that it doesn't exist, because I've asked those questions, but they talk in circles. Oh, we can't issue those anymore, and you know, we've got this new form, and you've got we assume that this is who you are. But if you stick to your guns, guys, New South Wales, there is another birth certificate exactly the same as Queensland. This has to be in the trust, otherwise the trust is not there.
It's everywhere.
Yeah,
it'll be in France.
It'll be everywhere. Yeah,
Germany, the whole system works
exactly the same way.
It's a banking system, a foreign banking system,
and it can't work without the debtor and creditor. I mean, that's how it works. Debt and credit, double entry bookkeeping, isn't it?
Yeah, and the administrator.
Yep.
See the Joker up there.
Yeah, so that's the grantor. That's the. Would that be would you say that'd be the state of New South Wales, or the New South Wales crowning right of New South Wales is registered on the US SEC?
Yes.
So,
and look, I'm not saying it's bad or good. I'm just saying that.
We're just trying to say this is how it operates, aren't we?
That's all. If you work out how it operates, it can be good.
And look, a bit of a warning to the police guys: you're taking such a huge risk when you're doing anything. We don't want you to be like, I know we've had our moments, but geez, you guys are risking some serious jail time. Don't do it. You're not paid enough. Don't.
No.
If something like this happens, walk away from it and get some, or at least get some really good legal advice. Because if you don't know that there's 2 birth certificates and you can't work out who you've got, and you do the wrong thing, well then.
And I tell you what, the administrators of this system, they are not going to tell the police.
Of course they're
not going to explain it. So the only way a police officer, or any officer in the military, they've got to try and understand this themselves. But the biggest thing that you've got to identify is the person a debtor or creditor, like pulling up a car. If the car's got a set of plates that's New South Wales or Queensland, those plates are telling you that they're tagged to that car has been registered to your corporation, so therefore it is your property. Now the people that have registered, they don't really know what they've done. They didn't realise that they gave the equity away. That's one of the tricks of this trust. And even the police, they don't know, but all you've got to do is just, has it got those plates? If it doesn't have those plates on it, or if it has no plates, you don't have any business of that. But what you've got to determine is if someone's registered the car and taken the plates off it.
Yep.
So that, that's a crime within the trust.
Yes.
So in that sense, you may have to stop the car and just check the driver. But if that driver is not a driver,
a traveller,
he's just a traveller, but does not hold any of this state birth certificate identification, but holds this, or
I guess maybe an
himself.
easy way for the police to understand this is they have jurisdiction over this one, not this one.
They've got no jurisdiction over that. And the best way to do it, if they can't find that person on the system, is to stand down, but you will probably get enough information of that person.
If you need to find them later, you'll find them later.
You'll find them later, yeah.
Go through your superiors, mate. The problem is, and this is what Rom proved to me with the Dun and Bradstreet, was that these are, I was talking in my last video about them being a military entity, and I said I wasn't sure which military it was. There might not be a military. You might be the military on your own while you're working, because there's no liability.
Nothing to hide behind.
There's nothing to hide. So that liability all falls on your shoulders. Whatever, you might all be in a big police force, but you're acting as a street gang legally. So the liability doesn't go to
each individual.
Anyone up high. It'll just fall on you for what you do. They'll just go, oh well, he can't read and he was doing what he wanted to do, and
they'll blame you.
They'll blame you. So guys, you're in so much danger with this system and this information being out. So please just be careful. We're tired of fighting with you. We tried to tell you this a long time ago.
I won't fight, but but we've
tired of getting beaten up by you, maybe.
Yeah.
More to the point.
And the reason why you don't win in the court is because it's a trust system.
Yeah.
So if you're the debtor, you can't win. But if you're the creditor, you can't lose. So when people that know about the system walk into court sitting on the other side, the poor old magistrate, he doesn't want to say anything. He's not obligated to, and he's not obligated to tell anyone anything. He can keep his mouth shut. But he should. He should. He should, and he does. They do.
I've seen them make a mistake when they open their mouth and start, it's practicing law from the bench.
Yeah, but as long as the magistrate can he will determine whether or not you're the debtor or creditor, and he just asks a few questions to determine that, like your name, your date of birth, or do you hold a passport or a driver license?
Are you Mr. Such and Such?
Yeah, because
that's where you consent.
Yeah, the very word Mr., the very title Mr. is a military account.
Yep.
So the minute you're in the military,
that guy's there. That's the military. That's the civilian that this guy protects.
Yeah, that's we the people.
Yep.
That's you, the citizen.
Yeah, these are the two persons.
And if you look at where the prime ministers, when they take the oath of office, the first thing they do is they say they take an oath to protect the people.
I, Scott John Morrison, do swear that I will well and truly serve the people of Australia in the office of Prime Minister, and that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, Queen of Australia, so help me God.
Yeah, they're protecting this guy.
Yes, and if these guys are all over here, then that puts the government here. Yeah. They're protecting themselves.
You're not over here, you can't be protected. You're this guy that they're protecting. So you step out of line.
I'm not saying they will have the fingers in the till. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. But if these aren't here to watch the till,
well, under trust law, by rights, they get to administer the estate under which is assessed to key vote.
Yeah, that's
1666. Right. The problem is, if you come back here, they have to give everything back.
Yes.
Because
at the end of the trust, but yes, they do.
Yeah. But they still have to, when you come back over here, they still have to look after and pay for everything because you're now the creditor, the beneficiary of the trust.
That's right.
And
look, I am saying that they do uphold it begrudgingly.
It only took us, 4 years?
Well, it's taken me...
Well, I'm 4 years in and I'm still getting beaten up.
It's taken me 8. You know, the very first...
It's only got another 4 to go.
No, I think you're a bit close to the mark. Look, in 2008, I won a court case against Ergon Energy. But mind you, that court case, every time I've won a court case, you will not find that number because they get rid of them. But all it was is the Ergon Energy bill my bill? Because is that my name on the bill?
Yep.
And in the end, it was a bit of a rough day in that court, and the marshal was there trying to get me to pay the electricity bill. And the argument was, well, is it my bill? Because
it wasn't that you didn't want to pay it, you just wanted to make sure you were paying the correct bill.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure, that's right. And I offered that. I said, I want to pay the bill. I need your help, Mr. McFadden, the magistrate. I said, I need your help to pay this bill. And he said, well, why don't you just pay it? I said, because I don't know about the name that's on the account. The name was written in all uppercase, and it was, and I just said, is it my name? And in the end, he agreed that it was not my name on the bill, and therefore under certain laws, it could have been 85Q of the Crimes Act 1914. Opening another person's mail is
or Q84N. Yep.
It's a criminal act. So was that my mail? And he said, well, you can open it. I said, that's not the question. The question is my name on that? And the final answer was, he said no. In the end, he rendered the bill void because of the name. And then in 2010, I then questioned the driver license name. And it was because it rendered from McFadden over the bill with the name on it. And then when it came to the driver license, I said, first is what's the writing on the driver license? And the second is, why was the name back the front? And the third question was, what styles manual did you use to construct the driver license? And that was before Magistrate Pinder of Cairns, and he could not answer that question. And
this is what they've got to find counterfactual evidence against in that question, haven't they? They've got to find something that disagrees with this, and probably every other encyclopedia, dictionary, children's
had no evidence
book. Yeah, there is none.
No,
and that's because it's not a fact, guys. This is a fact.
Fiction. Yes, the fact is that the name written on the driver license and the name on all of their stuff, the name on banking, mortgages, all of that stuff is a presumption, and also your agreement to pay a contract. You know, if a guy questions a bank loan of $1 million, questions the validity of the bank loan, and the bank then drops the loan and falls out, and the loan falls out, did the bank lose $1 million? And that's what it is. No, the bank did not, because when banks
didn't get
loan money to you, they actually take it from your account here and give it to this account here. And then you pay that back to yourself through the bank, through the administrator. And if you never come back to here, then everything that you've paid back stays with the banker, with the administrator.
That's why they have those massive profits that we just can't understand.
That's right. Profits, because everything goes to
Predicted by your friend here.
this will be another movie I'd like to make mention. The next, this is Edward Mandell House. That's Woodrow Wilson, and he was the advisor of it, but he was also the mastermind by the US Federal Reserve. And there's some things that he said in one of his statements to Woodrow Wilson that confirms that the US Federal Reserve was nothing but a massive money-making bankers sort of scam, you know, and we the people of the countries have paid for this, and that's how a lot of money, United States have lost money, Australia, a lot of de jure national countries have been subjected to these people, and even I think that the Hitler thing in Germany, I'd never say if Hitler was good or bad, but what they used was this system, and it can be abused for terrible outcomes, you know.
And at the end of the day, if you want to go back to the Roman maxims in the Pandex, or whatever they call them, the original Roman books of law produced by Justinian, the whole system still isn't legal. Like, you have to agree to it at some point. And this is, I guess, why we're a bit, astounded that they didn't let us just quietly move back to the beneficiary, because if we get out, all that original law comes back in, and this whole fraud system falls over. I mean, that's
well, I think it's just absolute ignorance on their behalf. But you have noticed that that the governing bodies, the administrators, are actually starting to pull their heads in a little bit over this information. I know we're not scientists or lawyers, but usually it's not scientists or lawyers that do the research and find out these things that are happening. It's people that have been hurt and people that have been treated badly by a system. They're the most dangerous, because they won't stop, and they've got nothing to stop. No. Because they will get to the nitty gritty of what
our livelihood doesn't depend on this system. We're not reliant on it. We're not part of it. We haven't sworn oaths to it.
That's right.
And
but a magistrate is.
He has.
He's relying on it. So therefore,
he's taken the benefit. He's to uphold the system.
So he has to be very careful.
In saying that, though, upholding the system, they maybe should have been a bit quieter about what they've done, because
they were quiet.
Well, I don't know. Well, they've also gone too far with people like us, though, haven't they? There's some people in the US that have also done the same thing too.
Edward Mandell House, when he came up with the system, which is really just a copy of the Justinian and the Accursius in 1230 and Justinian in 530 to whatever. I can't remember. But don't think that those guys were dumb back then. They were very, very clever. I mean, that Justinian system. But what Mandell House did is he's just really operating this slavery system. It's a corpus juris, which means a jurisdiction of. Well, actually, it's the corpus juris. It's a jurisdiction. Make sure that's the right way. Of the margin. It's a jurisdiction of the gutter,
outside
the sewer. And what they're doing is, that's one world. The world of the sewer is the world of here. The world of the context is in here, and you've been tricked over there. Yep. What they've done is they've bought the.
I guess if you want to get biblical, tree of life and the tree of knowledge.
That's
the corporation, and you will surely die.
Yes, you will, and you have to be there to be in the military account.
But in the Bible, no, they didn't actually die. They just got asked out of the garden. They got kicked over to here when they
literally asked out. But no, we're all in the garden, but they could come back in under license.
Yeah.
So that's why they need a license to do everything, even the crap. You need a license. But what Mandell House did, this very clever fella here, he on one of his statements, he said that it will be less than 1 in a million that will ever work this scam out. And what he said then is that they will have plausible deniability. And the plausible deniability means that everything that they've done was based on a presumption and your belief
Yep.
that you entered into it. Because when you finally work it out, you'll realise that it was not. It's you. There's nothing there.
Yeah.
And it all
Never
based
was,
on
never
just
has been.
never has been, and even a bank mortgage. You owe the house $400,000. It doesn't exist.
That's the big
it's-
trick, isn't it?
It's in your mind, but to get out of it, you've got to get rid of all your whole life of driver licenses, of credit cards, of
Legal titles of everything.
Legal titles, and are you going to do that? No, you don't know how to do that.
This is one of the safeguards of the
It's
system, is that it works so well to get you in, and you spend your life building up this, what you think is this equity in it, which is never equity.
It's never equity.
It's debt. It's the opposite. It's the legal title.
Well, it's always dead. And
Like, it kind of is, but it isn't. You know, that's you can have a good life in there, can't you?
Oh,
Being
yeah,
a slave,
absolutely.
you can.
yeah, and that's the other thing too. Like I talk about this world.
You know.
I'm saying that it
You got to be
exists.
careful, because we've walked off into the desert. If you do want to follow Moses, you know, like, because I think the slaves were going, we had a better life when we were slaves back in the.
Yep.
So.
And that's something that you've got to weigh up, you know. And I've never been.
This isn't easy, guys. Trust me. Like,
No.
we sit here and tell you about it, but geez, we've been through hell.
Yeah. And
Seen it
the
all.
other couple of people that have done this also have been through the same sort of stuff. But I think we get pushed through this. And I think what's happening is that the system with the magistrates, they want to test to make sure that we know what's going on. Because if there's any one little glitch that we don't know, we'll wind up in the prison or whatever with debts, a massive amount of debts. So, and that's what I mean about just the little bit of knowledge
Yeah.
is dangerous. But you've got to really know a lot about this trust law system. But strangely enough, we also have an obligation. Like, sure, I hate those police officers that did this to us. But on the other hand,
They don't know. They
don't know.
They only know this. They've
No.
only ever seen that.
I mean, we're also obligated to protect them. So that's what this is all about too. I certainly don't. And you know, the bottom line.
Guys, your police, have a look for this. See if you can find it.
Yeah.
You've got the authority to do it. There was some Marines in the US that started looking into this because they had the authority, because they're all going to lose their houses under the mortgage crisis, the subprime mortgage. So they started looking at it. They all quit the Marines and went, "What's going on here?" So this is proof right here, guys. This is proof. If you're a police officer, any sort of officer, have a look at this. Don't just go off and make assumptions here, because we're getting to a point where you will get your ass kicked.
And the thing is that a couple of the older style police officers, such as that have been on to David Walter, who's a really lovely 40 odd years in the police force. But his investigation mind has also found a lot of this stuff, and it's all disturbed him too, because he grew up with these with the belief in the police force, and then now he's found that it's something else, and we have even police officers that are looking and starting to find this. But like I say, it's a system at the moment. You can't throw it away at the moment.
No.
We've got to look after it, but just when you're in it, be careful.
Yeah.
And still you've got to love your
understand what you're doing, and understand who your nationals are and your citizens are.
yeah. And when the magistrates, I mean, if you lose in the court, that's because the magistrate knows where you've gone wrong. He will know. He knows the system, and when he becomes a magistrate, he's told about this. And that's probably why
Some of them are, I think. Some of them may not be.
Rowan got one that was an ex-police officer for and they're the worst
He
type.
was an ex-police prosecutor for a number of years, and then just went straight into a country legal practice. He did apply for a judgeship, I heard, but they didn't give it to him.
No, he won't get a judgeship. Because when it comes to the crunch, those guys, and all they are, all that the high courts really determine is first is the consent. Have you consented to be in the system? And if they can find there's any point where the consent is not there, then they'll find that point.
Yep.
And that's what it really boils down to, is have you consented to the system.
But they can't turn up and, drag you in there and then threaten you and go, if you don't turn up, you're going to do 10 years and 3 years in prison.
If
and then
they've discovered that you're a citizen.
If you go, I'm not this guy, and they go, yes you are, and if you don't turn up, we'll lock you up. And then you turn up, that's duress, threat of force, coercion.
Absolutely
they
dangerous.
Can't do it. And that's what happened to me. I said, I'm not this guy, I'm this guy. I'm still trying to find this certificate. You won't give it to me. And they went, no, you're this guy. We don't care what you say.
Yeah, well, that's dangerous.
That's where they screwed up.
But for the last letter...
That's why they use you. You is plural. We should be using thou or thee. I mean, I know it sounds old English, but that's actually correctly how. Yeah, thou art.
Well, you can still be a you, because we're involved in this trust, so we are connected. If you're outside altogether...
Well, I asked Holmes to define you. I said, define the pronoun, which you? Who am I, who am I being?
You're either one of those.
He said you, just you.
Yeah.
I'm not. He didn't answer the question, and that was the end of it.
What a goat.
And there's 2 days of that transcript that are missing that I can't get.
No.
The first 2 days where I mentioned all this, and I said, this is treason, it's fraudulent conversion, it's slavery, and I'm taking it further, and I have been. It's still a process, but we'll get there.
Yeah, I think it's but it's been a long journey.
It's been frustrating because we tried to tell them at the start in 2014, we worked this out.
Yes.
You need to do something.
I've been very lucky since the last court case in 2016. I don't know the number. I was never given a number for it, and any bit of paper that I was shown, I never got any paper. But the prosecutor of that court case, I won't say his name, but after that court case, he left.
Yeah, well, I've seen a few resign. I sent a letter to the Premier and the Police Commissioner, Scipione and Baird, and they both quit within 14 days of getting that.
Yeah, they've only got 14 days, and once they've become aware
Emergent confirmation rule, there you go.
So they're operating under the...
They're doing it.
They're doing the right thing.
Oh, Jesus, I'm out. Close down business, I'm out of here. Shut the shop up. One thing I found interesting is that on Dun & Bradstreet is the Commonwealth Department of Public Prosecutions has 2 separate names, all in capitals, and one of them is a trading name, which is the Commonwealth Department of Public Prosecutions, and they've got a different name, which is, I can't remember what it was. So they have a trade name, so they must be trading. Like, they're not a de jure entity.
Well,
it's business as usual,
I found something interesting about Commonwealth of Australia was owned by a company called Black Rock Mining, which was, and I haven't been able to find that again. It was one of those things that I've found. I took some copies of it.
Well, New South Wales is owned by Oz Mining, which is a mining company in Western Australia. You can look that up on the ABN lookup. And the thing about, I think it's interesting, Ron, is they're always mining companies, because it says that a mining company can be a no liability company. They're the only companies that can be a no liability company. You've got limited liability and which is limited, you can sue it to the limit of the shares, or no liability, which is all the mining companies. It doesn't say they have to mine, they just have to be a mining company. So I'm guessing that's why they do that.
Well, they're certainly mining the wealth of this country, and a lot of that wealth is going overseas, and as what's starting to upset these plebeian Australians that have become the citizens of their company. You'll notice, like the farmlands and the drought and these things where a lot of the money is going overseas for whatever purpose, but a lot of that money should all be staying in this country in order to get.
Well, it's in here, but they've got the option to send it overseas because you're here.
Because you're there, and it's what they do is they blame us for it, but it's very hard to. Even though we have to accept the blame, it's very hard to accept the blame when we don't know.
And the amount of reading and research we had to do just to work this out.
Yeah. No wonder they got rid of, I always say, there's some thunder going on up here. No, shouldn't. We've upset God. It's the amount of money that they've taken from this country is really actually probably criminal, and it's going offshore, meaning that it's going from a land-based jurisdiction into a water-based jurisdiction. So when something goes offshore, it never gets back on land. It stays within the corporate world.
So there would be no way if you came back under here to ever get that repaid under the Cesta Kivi Act?
Oh, yes. Technically, that's if you come back here. I think that
this is why the Rothschilds maybe. I heard a bit of a rumour that they're trying to liquidate because they know that people, if they come back here, they're going to be stuck with that debt.
They will be. They've agreed to be the first debtor, and what they've got the art.
So they're this guy, and then they've got to try and find someone to give this guy, which is you.
Yeah,
that's how they do it. Yeah,
it's called conversion or
fraudulent conversion.
Fraudulent. I didn't really say that, but if they're using like these two documents. A fraud. They're not fraud.
Well, they're legal fictions, and a legal fiction is a fraud when it's not disclosed or agreed to. And to be honest, if these are created when you're a baby, you're an infant in the infantry, they do this to look after you. But then you get to the age of majority, they don't sort of tell you, and unless you're going to go and become a QC and read all the stuff or do what Rom and I did, which was just look at it for years.
The problem with a magistrate or a QCs are those people, once they've taken the oath of office, to find out, because they will never know what we've discovered. This took a lot of work to crack this, but when they finally do find out, they are probably disturbed at it, but it's too late.
They've taken an oath not to release this.
Yeah, and so
we haven't.
No, I've taken no oath. And it's the same with the Masonic oath too.
Yep.
When you take when you take a Masonic oath. A lot of people take that oath without realising at first they want to be in a club, and it's a great club to be in too. But once that oath has been taken and you work up to the higher levels and find out the truth about these systems, and it's not just, there's a Masonic system also and the Jesuit system as well.
Yep.
And once you're in that system, you've taken your oath and you find out this stuff, you can't leave.
Yeah.
Your oath is life.
That's it. You're done.
So, and I think God or Christ did warn about
taking oaths.
Taking oaths.
Yep.
So
don't do it.
Yep.
But we haven't, and I guess that's the issue here. So.
Well, my oath is to find out what's going on, and I guess by doing what we're doing is I'm obligated is to at least.
Did you want to read that little bit on page 666? I don't think we got to it.
Yes, I will do that. But the biggest thing I wanted to do was just make sure, because I received some really heavy threats. There were threats. There were a form of death threat that I won't see the light of day, or I won't hit something about hitting. I'll be dead.
I've received them as well.
And they came from higher sources. So under that light, I thought, well, if they're going to kill me, I at least should share
some of this
what I've found so far, and then you guys can take it from there. But so far they've been great for the last 2 years. But
sorry about the rain. I hope this sounds still okay.
Yes, we're going to have a bit of background noise. It's beautiful, isn't it? Really.
It is. I'll just answer one of the questions on one of my videos. Someone said, they still received the ticket in Washington in the all caps, and then or someone went to court and they still found the Christian name guilty. I don't know whether you're still holding all the documents. While you're holding any of those, you're still in trouble. So that's what you've got to be. You've got to get out. You've got to get your standing correct. Anything to do with this or any other legal fiction. The police sometimes don't even make it. It's something completely different. When I found out about this, there were 16 different persons. 16 different incantations in my own name, all spelling.
Oh yeah.
So I had to get rid of all of them.
That's called shape-shifting.
Yeah, shape-shifting. So I had to get rid of them all, and I was astounded at how many I had. I was actually sitting in Hog's Breath and wrote it down on a coaster when I did. I was like, wow. And there's only one, and that's this one. So I hope that answers your question, and thanks for all the comments online, guys. We really appreciate all the nice comments. They're great. They keep us going.
I even like the bad comments.
Yeah, they're funny. Give you a laugh.
But it's good, because even someone that's got a bad comment, the very fact is that bad commenting person looked at the video.
Yeah.
So somewhere down the track, at least he's had a look, and that's all we can really.
Hey guys, I don't care if you're a researcher or a cop or whatever. Police, you're a cop because you're a good person. You ain't going into it. because you wanted to be a criminal. Have a look at this. You know, this is your children are going to have to suffer this if we don't do something about it now.
Well, I did say to Mr. Comans in the court case, I said when we have domestic violence or some form of violence or brawls in the street, you don't see the magistrate coming down there to sort it out.
You don't.
he's hiding.
Well, if that happens in the court, they tend to run out too, don't they?
Yeah. So we've always got to remember that about our officers.
Be a peace officer first, be a police officer when you know what you're dealing with.
And I'll tell you what, you do get appreciated, even by people like us that are researching, that have been beat up by you, trashed and stole my cars. You've done a lot of nasty things.
Under the wrong name.
Yeah. But
I was the only one in there for a text message, I can tell you that.
And give you drugs in the watch house, which is probably pretty cool, but not before a court case. You do all these sort of things, but it doesn't ever stop us from appreciating the fact of still what you do. But there's
read this out.
This is in
page 666.
Page 666 in this in the Chicago Manual of Styles, which is just I don't know what that number means.
I don't know. I've heard it before, Ron. It could be something.
But this is just one little point. It's 11/1/29. Some combinations of signs have taken on a some combinations of signs have taken on a meaning separate from the meaning of the individual signs. So when you see a sign, which is the all uppercase text message, which is these things here, these word marks, sometimes they don't really say what you've assumed them to say. And that warning is in 11/1/29
in American Sign Language.
American Sign Language and foreign languages on page 666 of the 17th edition. It further goes on to say, I think, various typographical conventions. Various typographical conventions are used to indicate these compounds, including a close-up mark, which is probably like that, close-up mark, or a plus sign.
Cross.
Which is a cross here, depending on the transcription system. The sign for parents, now this is very interesting too. The sign for parents might be glossed as mother and father in all uppercase.
Mother on the New South Wales, mother and father.
And what they're saying when it's glossed as mother and father, it's saying that it's not your mother and father, it's your parents. And a parent is a guardian.
A guardian is the government who's created this.
And the mother and father are no longer there.
Trustee. And your parents actually, when this is all done, I think they become curators, which is like a curator looks after, say, an artwork. They look after it like it's their own. They're a trustee. They look after it. They can't go and sell it. So that's why they can take your children off you in court, because they're their children. They're the parents, and they're just there to go, well, have you been a good curator?
And the minute you
they are the parent.
The moment you've registered your child to a foreign private company, that private foreign company owns the child and then owns the estate of the child.
Yep.
And the estate of the child is his or her birthright share of the land that they've been born on, which is a share of the mineral and the energy wealth. So that's what happens when you register your child to a de jure government, then it would belong to the government of the people of Australia. But if you registered your child to a government that is the government of a private foreign corporation.
It's administrator, really, isn't it? Of the government, not actually a government as such.
Yes, well, they're all administration.
Yeah.
And then, so then that means you've given the estate of the child, which is their share of the mineral and energy wealth of the land you're born on, to that private foreign Rothschild banking company. And they're just going, oh,
thanks.
Thank you. We'll print the money off that, which they do. And your share of Australia, which is unbelievably, I don't know what it is, but
Mine was 144 million last time I checked.
and that includes everything in Australia, plus all the mineral and energy wealth that's there for in reserve, sitting in the ground that's been found. So that's a share of the national people. So that's obviously why they have to remove you and turn you into a citizen and a resident of your own land, is to get you off the land in order to administer your wealth of it, print the money up, and then sell you your money off back to you. So it's the biggest joke ever played on people of the world. I think the UN, the United Nations, is they're just trying to bring it all under one tiny little roof, so less and less people become aware of it.
They only have to have you set up to one place. It could be the Vatican, it could be New South Wales, it could be America. Wherever these rules are in place, all they do is they just register everything to that.
Yep.
And remember that the Vatican is a religious dictatorship. It does what it wants.
You can fit 4 of those countries, the Vatican country, you can fit 4 of them in the New York Central Park.
Yeah.
So it just goes to show that country that administers the wealth of the world.
And the Vatican has no nationals, wasn't it?
Yes, now that's something strange. They make sure no one is born on the Vatican 800 metres in order that there's no national person that can...
Because they would come back and they would own.
They would own everything. So that means that everything then remains in the hands of the administrator, which is the Pope or the Vatican. So the Vatican that holds all the rights over all persons throughout the world and all corporations, it's going to have to make sure that no one is born. So it could be a good idea if one of you out there can race and have a baby on the
Vatican. Have a baby on the Vatican. If you're pregnant, go for a tour when you're about 9 months and a bit overdue.
And try and get your baby born on the Vatican.
They will own the world, basically.
Yeah, very interesting. And that's what the Swiss Guard are probably there to take you. Get that baby off. Get that baby off.
Throw it over the wall.
But it's a funny thing. It is a joke. The money, everything that they're using is a joke. The money's a joke. And that's why, and another really dangerous part about this, and it's about citizens citizenship that have come in from other countries. When you're on Australia and you have citizenship through the Commonwealth of Australia corporation, if that corporation is defunct,
closes,
your citizenship to this country goes with it. It's gone. And that is a very sort of disturbing. A few people have said, no, that can't be right. But
if you want to apply the law, how the law is meant to work, and these things are true. This is the operation of law. The operation of law resides above the will of any man. This is the will of the people, and it's all set in place. It's all there. It's just not being used because we all took contracts to join the US Federal Reserve Corporation with the word mark Commonwealth of Australia, which I found something interesting. It's called the possibility of confusion, and that's in the US. If you go to the US Information Protection Copyright, whatever their website, whatever that government arm is called, and go to the glossary, it's in there. And what they've done is they've actually breached that law, because that's like me coming up with, instead of Coca-Cola, I try and register Coke and Cola.
yeah,
It's too close, but they've done exactly that. And
yes,
so that's what they've done. They've registered this deceptively similar corporation to Australia. I don't know how the international trade goes on that, because Australia, but they've got everyone in. There's no one in the Commonwealth of Australia to object, apart from you and me and a couple of others that have done it. But we should object to that. Stop using our country's name as a trademark for your company.
well, if they uphold the trust and serve the people, which they promised they would, well then there's no real reason for us to complain about it.
If we have to leave this system, if this system falls down, we have to leave, then I don't know what's going to happen between Commonwealth of Australia and the US Federal Reserve. It'll be interesting to see.
Well, I think it'll be nothing. It is nothing, and it will be nothing. And when the people of America too, United States of America, realise that all, and they will just find their own way back home as well. But anyway, I think
What are we going for? Time enough.
Yeah,
Pretty hot.
yeah. But it's good to it's good to catch up with Rowan again.
This video is a bit overdue for us doing something together.
Yes.
We've been working together for a long time, and it predated anything. How long has it been now? Over 10 years that we've been doing this.
For me, it's 10 years.
Well, 10 years ago, I met you at least 10 years ago.
Yeah, I don't know if it's been worth it, but for some odd reason, when I finally got this far, it's an incredible amount of powerful information. And if you know enough of it, you do have a lot of power over
Do
it.
be careful with it. Don't just go and wield it without knowing what you're doing. You'll get in trouble. We have. Do your research. Get your paperwork done. Get this behind this.
But all I can say is you just maintain respect for each other, still respect the system, but the system's got to respect too.
Yeah, it goes both ways. Otherwise, we end up with war and tyranny. That's the end of it.
And they make money out of that.
Well, they do too, but this system also falls down, which they might not win this war.
No.
When the soldiers work out that their families and that are being affected by this,
It's
it'll be a
one way,
different story.
yeah. But it's really a breaking of the tyranny that's got to stop.
Yep.
Anyway, it's really
Pleasure as always, mate.
yeah. Thank you.